Tonight,
I am a gun owner, and you do not ever have a shotgun pointed, especially at a child.
Let's agree to disagree about taking babies from their parents at the borders. Pass the turkey.
The purpose of the law was to make it easier to convict African Americans.
the first wave of asylum seekers has reached a stadium in Mexico City, and as many as 5,000 are expected by Wednesday. Several caravans of Central Americans are aiming to regroup there to get food, medicine, and shelter. From there, some may stay, while others will seek asylum at the U.S. border, which is still 500 miles away. The U.S. Olympic Committee took the first step to decertify USA Gymnastics and take over all its operations. It comes after years of criticism over how USAG handled sexual assault allegations. In an open letter to American gymnasts, the Olympic Committee's chief executive said, quote, "You deserve better." The Lion Air plane that crashed in Indonesia had problems with its speed indicator on its last 4 flights, according to data recovered from one of the plane's black boxes. Investigators say they aren't yet sure what caused the crash that killed 189 people. Divers are still searching for the second black box, the cockpit voice recorder. Social network Gab is back online, a week after it was deplatformed following news that the man accused in the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting frequently published anti-Semitic posts on the site. Gab found a new home on Epic, a Seattle-based domain registrar. The self-proclaimed champion of free speech blamed its hiatus on the media, tweeting, quote, "May God have mercy on you for what you people have done this past week." Election Day voting starts less than 12 hours from now. And however the day goes, this deeply divided country will at least be able to unify in gratitude that the midterms are finally over. Traditionally, campaigns try to close on a positive message that makes voters feel good.
Let me just say these are specially approved by Michelle.
In Virginia today, Barack Obama and Tim Kaine brought donuts to volunteers, and the former president touched on his signature theme.
You guys make me feel hopeful.
The Republican message, by contrast, is mostly about fear of Democrats.
If the radical Democrats take power, they will take a wrecking ball to our economy and to our future.
And the immigrant horde that Trump says the Democrats want to welcome in.
They want America to be a giant sanctuary city for drug dealers, predators, and bloodthirsty MS-13 killers.
Trump's re-election campaign is airing a TV ad pushing the same theme, or trying to.
The migrant caravan must be stopped.
CNN said the ad was too racist to air, and NBC and Fox News have now pulled back too, under enormous pressure. Hyperbolic political ads, both positive and negative, are an American tradition. We asked pollster Frank Luntz to convene a group of Republican and Democratic voters in Georgia to see which ads work and which ones don't.
You all have your dials here. They should go from 0 to 100. You're going to start at 0. The more impactful, the more persuasive the ad is, the higher you're going to turn your dial. A really good ad will score an 80 or 85. Most ads, quite frankly, score about a 35 or 40. So your reactions happen on a second-by-second basis, and then I see it up there. So everyone go to 0, and let's play the ad.
Our parents have 3 rules.
Thank you.
Go to church, go to school, and take care of each other. You'll put this in the refrigerator for the kinship family? Thank you. Let us thank him for our food. Amen.
Let's eat.
All right.
Bye-bye.
We all found different ways to care, helping others to thrive, not just survive.
I'm watching the dial score, and this is a contentious election, a rough election. And Republicans dialed that ad as positive as Democrats did. Tell me why.
It's about kids.
It's about family.
I think it speaks to tradition. It's hard to go against that, but I don't necessarily.
She's talking about faith. She's talking about family. It's everything that I think Georgia is about.
Bringing everyone to the table.
Many Republicans would not be able to dial a Democrat that high in a contentious election because they would be opposed or resentful. You have the ability to give that a positive reaction. Is that unique to Georgia, or is that unique to Stacey Abrams?
Unique to Stacey Abrams.
Why?
When she started her campaign, it was about we, not us versus them. And
I don't think it's unique to Stacey Abrams. I think Southern values, it portrays that, but at the end of the day, I don't think she'll actually do what she says. I don't like her policies, so I think the message conveys a good Southern tradition, but I don't believe her.
You look at that ad and you're like, I bet you she's a really good person. She sounds like she has a good head on her shoulders. I mean, that's what we're reacting to. Because now, if she went into policy, I'm sure the Republicans,
Back to zero.
I'm Brian Kemp. This is Jake, young man interested in one of my daughters.
Yes, sir.
Jake asked why I was running for governor. I said, 1,
cap government spending.
2,
take a chainsaw to regulations.
3,
make Georgia #1 for small business.
And 2 things if you're gonna date one of my daughters.
Respect.
And?
A healthy appreciation for the Second Amendment, sir.
We're gonna get along just fine.
Brian Kemp for governor.
That is like piss poor for the Democrats. Is it the gun?
It was right after Parkland, and I am a gun owner and have used guns my entire life, and you do not ever have a shotgun pointed, especially at a child. It was just completely the wrong time for him to have done that.
Brian Kemp is politically incorrect. He comes out and says that he wants us to be taken lightly. It's not to be taken.
Well, the other thing that bugs me about Kemp's ads is that he throws in that deep Southern drawl. I know Brian Kemp. I can call him on my cell phone right now. He does not have that deep Southern drawl.
Yes, he tries to play like he's this good old boy, and this man is a millionaire. This man is getting pedicures on the weekends, drinking mimosas. He's not sitting here with his shotgun. Give me a break. Give me a break.
Back to zero.
I'm the youngest child of a single immigrant mother. I can remember taking the number 34 bus, where my mom and I would get off the bus and we'd walk up to the homes on top of the hill. There, my mother would spend the vast majority of her day cleaning other people's homes. But it was there where I witnessed the value of hard work. This was a woman who worked her fingers to the bone. She was the woman who put the clothes on my back, so I owe it to this single mother, this woman, and millions like her, throughout the state, throughout the country, who do everything within their power to protect their children.
I gotta ask Republicans in this room, that's the American dream story, is it not? And you only got to a 50. Why?
I didn't see the point of mentioning she was an immigrant.
That's her experience.
That's
and
what she
the
is.
American experience is about each of our experiences individually. We each have a story of how we achieved the American dream. We celebrate it. Is it because she's brown?
No, it had nothing to do with race. It had to do with the fact that I didn't understand what her immigration status had to do with the ad.
Because it creates a hurdle for her to have to climb, one that you might not have to face yourself as a natural born
I think it
citizen.
can be politically charged. They know the divisiveness between illegal immigration, and I think they could use that to their advantage.
Back to zero, please.
I'm Richard Ojeda, and people say that I'm angry. Well, angry is an understatement. When I come home and I find that I got children in my backyard that have it worse than the kids that I saw in Iraq and Afghanistan, I can't accept that. When I see companies using bankruptcy loopholes to keep from paying our coal miners the pensions that they work for, I will not sit quiet. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been sold out. We've been sold out by people like Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, and the Washington insiders. I approve this message because I am angry, and I'm ready to fight back.
He's a Democrat.
You can't tell what party he is with looking at that ad, right?
Yeah.
He talks about poverty. He talks about representing the people in his district. He attacks both right and left, or Democrat and Republican. And so it really is, that's why I think it appealed to everybody, is because everybody kind of saw themselves in him.
He appeals to the old school Democrats. He really does, the ones that we've lost.
Because I think what people lose is that we don't all love Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. We're not all in bed with them. They want to say that they are the faces of us, but they're not. That's the thing.
So if Nancy Pelosi, if her party wins on Tuesday night, how many would rather have a different Democrat be Speaker of the House? Raise your hands.
Can we all agree on that?
Yeah. Back to zero, please.
The screaming, the violence, the smears, and death threats. The far left moving to socialism, undefended open borders, immediate tax increases, 100% government-run health care. The booming economy stopped. Nancy Pelosi back in power. Gridlock. And then impeachment. Is that really what you want? Voting for any Democrat gets you all of that. Future 45 is responsible for the content of this advertising.
That was the most divisive ad I have ever tested in my political career. You want to talk about it? But is that ad appropriate?
No.
Yes. No, it's not.
Why not?
Because they said voting for any Democrat, and this is what you're going to get. They're lumping everybody into some far left. Yes, they're wanting everybody.
And the burning flag and the intense nature of it that's inciting violence. And right now, as we know, amplifying violence isn't a
Who
good
burned that
thing.
flag?
The Democrats.
Who shot up the synagogue?
The dude who shot up that synagogue, that monster, I don't think I don't think he's a Republican. The guy is literally a fascist. He is a neo-Nazi. But it's very important. We have to understand that when we say one bad person does something so they must represent everything, that gets you the same exact thing that got in the mind of that monster that went in and shot up that synagogue.
It's ads like this that divide our country. And if I was a Chinese or Russian trying to bring America down, I'd be like, you know what? I'm gonna create a super PAC and I'm gonna play this on a constant stream all day, every day.
Exactly.
If the midterms are dividing American families, they're an all-out war for these families. Dave and Tim Gosar are the brothers of Arizona Congressman Paul Gosar. Earlier this year, they cut an attack ad for their brother's opponent.
Paul Gosar is my brother. And I endorse Dr. Brill.
Wholeheartedly endorse Dr. David Brill for Congress.
Curtis Ingraham is the brother of Laura Ingraham, the easily parodied Fox News host.
Good evening, I'm Laura Ingraham.
We brought them together to find out what it's like when politics actually tears your family apart.
A lot of people have, political conflicts within their families. There's this cliche of the drunk uncle who spouts off at Thanksgiving dinner. But for you guys, that relative doesn't go away. They're out there in the world making choices that, in your view, make the world a worse place. What is that like?
We're not having Thanksgiving dinner together. We're not having Christmas dinner together. Because this is real. His hurt towards people that need help is real.
Are you supposed to stand by your family no matter what they do? Hey, Paul, let's agree to disagree about taking babies from their parents at the borders. Pass the turkey.
You guys feel like your siblings are involved in racial demagoguery?
What do you call it when all day long on your Twitter feed and your Facebook page, all you're doing is hyping this ridiculous caravan thing? What do you call when you're affiliating yourself with white nationalists?
Someone asked me, is that really your sister? Is she just playing a media personality? And I think it is who she has become.
Massive demographic changes have been foisted upon the American people. And they're changes that none of us ever voted for, and most of us don't like.
She said that letting immigrants in might change or dilute our national experience, our American way of life. And I thought, hypocrite. You have 3 adopted children, 1 from Guatemala, 2 from Russia. How can you make a statement like that and sit there and know that you have kids that are themselves from other countries?
Yeah, your sister was just parodied on Saturday Night Live as basically a racist, lying demagogue. Like, how did you feel about that?
We were raised in a family that was very abusive, alcoholic father, a Nazi sympathizer. I remember finding the copy of Mein Kampf on the bookshelf. I found a Nazi armband, a Nazi helmet in the cellar. There was a Confederate flag. That's the familial soil.
In a statement to Vice News, Laura Ingraham said, "The family hasn't seen Curtis in years and is extremely worried about him. They find it very sad to see him exploited by media outlets for their own political ends."
What would it take for you to reconcile with your sister?
It would require a discussion. But my sister, it's closed down. I'm not saying it's not a possibility, but what I see right now, I don't see it happening.
This isn't I'm sorry for, doing all those horribly destructive things. It's going to take more than just words to get back in. You show me some actions.
Paul Gosar is very likely to win re-election. His brothers accept that they can't change his mind or the minds of many of his constituents. But they want to get people to try to change the minds of their drunk uncles.
How much do you feel like it's a five-alarm fire and like your job is to warn people to stop America from going down that road?
You've got Nazis marching in the street in Charlottesville, just out in the open. You got a slaughter in a synagogue. It's about the stoking of this racial divide that Trump is fully a part of, and so's Laura, and so's Paul.
Louisiana voters weigh in tomorrow on Amendment 2, which would cut one of the most enduring racist legacies of the Jim Crow era out of the state constitution: non-unanimous jury verdicts. And unlike a lot of ballot initiatives, this one has bipartisan support.
The jury system in Louisiana is very unusual. In a capital case, in a death penalty case, the verdict must be unanimous. All 12 jurors must agree. But for every other felony, the verdict can be 10 out of 12. In other words, it can be non-unanimous. Well, that wasn't always the law in Louisiana. The law changed in 1880. There's no question that the purpose of the law was to make it easier to convict African Americans of felonies. The authors of this law knew that even if African Americans were serving on the jury, their 1 or 2 or 3 votes could always be outvoted. I've been practicing law for 38 years, and I'd served as a DA for 6 years, and I had been a criminal defense lawyer, and I was completely unaware of the Jim Crow origins of the law. And once I found out where it came from, it just burned in my soul. God put it on my heart to do something about this. Louisiana is one of the leaders in the nation in exonerations. And we know that about half of those exonerations were 10-2 verdicts, and many of those involved African-American citizens. We also know that there was a higher percentage of African-Americans that were convicted as a result of non-unanimous juries. The law is unjust because it deprives the people of the full protection of the right to trial by jury. Reasonable doubt is the cornerstone of the criminal justice system. It's the highest standard of proof that we have. And if all the jurors do not agree, then that person should not be found guilty. It's just that simple. And so what we are doing now is we have gone out all across the state to educate the public about why Amendment number 2 is so important and why they need to vote for it.
This is a 138-year-old mistake our state did after the Civil War, after Reconstruction, that has rippled throughout our entire criminal justice system.
People that ordinarily wouldn't agree on anything came together on this issue because liberty is something for all of us. Liberty is something we can all agree on, regardless of our political beliefs and our background.
Today, the Trump administration is imposing its toughest sanctions yet on Iran's oil, shipping, and banking sectors in response to what the president says is Iran's failure to comply with the 2015 nuclear deal. But the justification for this round of sanctions has less to do with Iran's nuclear ambitions and more to do with containing Iran's ballistic missile program and its attempts to expand its influence in the region.
Our objective is to starve the Iranian regime of the revenue it uses to fund violent and destabilizing activities throughout the Middle East and indeed around the world.
Tehran's involvement in Syria to support the Assad regime is one of the biggest US gripes, but its support for Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthi rebels in Yemen, and Shiite militia groups in Iraq have also put the two governments at odds. While Trump's response to these sanctions is opposed by many of his allies around the world, he's taken a provocative tone. His Game of Thrones-style tweet drew a response in kind from top Iranian military commander Qasem Soleimani. Although Iran says it will continue to sell oil, the new sanctions will hurt the already ailing economy. But will they actually have the desired effect? The answer is probably not. For one thing, the sanctions come with a bunch of waivers. 8 countries will be allowed to continue purchasing Iranian oil for now, as long as they don't pay in US dollars, including its top customers, India, China, and Italy, leaving the UAE as the biggest importer without a waiver. Hardly zero tolerance. Also, Iran's appetite for meddling hasn't been curbed by its economy so far. Those activities are relatively inexpensive. According to recent analysis, between 2011 and 2015, Iran's GDP shrank by a third, but during that period, Tehran sent more weapons to its allies than during any other time, dispatching military support and funding to Syria and sending arms into Iraq and Yemen.
The Israelis have made an estimate that the Iranians are spending in Syria roughly $700 million a year in the last 5 years. Now, I'm not saying that's a small amount of money, but in comparison, the Saudis are spending $6 billion a month in Yemen without having anything to show for it. So this is actually a very uncostly way for them to be able to advance their interest. So if the economic situation gets worse, they're more likely to actually spend more of their resources in relative terms on those issues, because that's where they're the most effective.
This obviously is also a strategy, surely, to put pressure on those in charge and limit, regional meddling or the other kinds of issues the US has with Tehran.
Trump has chosen to create a crisis. What this will do, more than anything else internally when it comes to Iran's politics, is that it's discrediting the idea that engagement, negotiations, and compromise with the United States works.
Finally, the sanctions are coming in as US ally Saudi Arabia is still struggling with the fallout from the killing of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi. As leader of the anti-Iran bloc in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia is a crucial partner in containing Tehran and has worked to undermine Iranian proxies like Hezbollah, but ratcheting up the pressure with the new round of sanctions could hardly have come at a worse time.
Holy shit. The sailor's time. Oh my God. Kind of a hot jam.
Let's face all our fears and come out of the shade.
I have a strong suspicion who this is here. This would be Muse, if I'm not mistaken. They're on a little bit of a U2 tip on this song, which I enjoy. It felt stirring and beautiful. Big fan of Muse.
I'll just try to stall. I don't peak too early. I don't peak.
All right. That one, enjoyed the melody. It was a little bit, probably one part Lemonheads with a pinch of Steve Earle in there. Couldn't really tell what that young man was singing about. I do not think it's important for the lyrics to be clear in songs. From Little Richard to Joe Strummer, some of the greatest yelling, mumbling lyrics of all time are ones that are indiscernible. But in this one, I was sort of curious what that fella might be going on about, and I don't know. We got on a metal tip there. I was surprised. At the beginning, I thought it was going to be like a Linkin Park ballad, and then all of a sudden it got all D-drop tune guitars, hyper musicianship, super metal, and I was pleasantly surprised by that. The band can play, challenging time signatures, and an emphasis on guitar tone and double bass, double kick pedals.
Always wanted to fall in love with an actor. Be okay with whomever they're kissing that day. It's only work, we've all got to get paid. Not sure I'm ready for that, but I'm sure I'm ready to change.
All right, there's some kind of violent femsy jam about a lovelorn lyricist. I tend to gravitate more towards dark, sad jams. That was a happy jam. The narrative seemed like it was kind of a romantic comedy story waiting to unfold. It's been nice spending this time with you.